Jessica Ridgeway killed by a 17-year-old boy. The case of Jessica Ridgeway has left a lot of people in tears. Even though the family got the justice that their daughter deserved, we can say that this was exceptionally cruel. Even the judge and prosecutor described this as pure evil. Austin Sigg, who was 17 years old at the time, kidnapped and killed Jessica Ridgeway, a 10-year-old girl. But what really happened? How did Austin Sigg do it, and how did he come to be arrested? Let's look at the story of Jessica Ridgeway, a 10-year-old girl who was killed by a 17-year-old boy. On the day that Austin Sigg was being sentenced to life behind bars, a judge and prosecutor said that Sigg offered the best word to describe what he had done to Jessica Ridgeway: evil. Jefferson County District Court Chief Judge Stephen Munsinger said, "Evil is apparently real. It was present in our community on October 5, 2012. On that day, its name was Austin Sigg." The sentencing in this case was quite complicated. Munsinger imposed the maximum sentence for several of the 15 counts. He wanted to ensure that Sigg, who was 18 at the time of the sentencing, would never leave prison. In October 2013, Sigg pleaded guilty to all counts against him, including first-degree murder in Jessica's death and attempted kidnapping for an attack on a jogger at Kettner Lake in May 2012. And since Sigg was 17 when he killed Jessica, this first-degree murder charge carried an automatic life sentence in prison, with the possibility of parole after 40 years. However, Munsinger went to the extent of serving an additional 86 years after he became eligible for parole. But when the judge passed on this sentence, the attorney passed on an argument that such a sentence was unconstitutional or cruel, and it was unlike any other punishment. However, the judge brushed off this argument and said, "The case cries out for a life sentence. But the question is, was it really that bad?" After the sentencing was passed, law enforcement, prosecutors, and Jessica's family exchanged hugs and wiped away tears, celebrating that justice had been served for their daughter. After the hearing, District Attorney Pete Weir said, "The damage, the hurt, the loss remains. We hope for closure for families, but at times I think that's a hollow term." He then added, "The full weight of the law has come to bear on Austin Sigg. It's not enough. More is needed, but it's all we can do." The sentencing lasted 2 days, and during this period, Sigg refused to speak. And as Munsinger was going through the charges, listing the maximum allowable time for most of them, Sigg only stared forward. He neither looked back at Jessica's family nor his mother, Mindy. On the other hand, Mindy Sigg kept sobbing as gruesome details about her son's crime were discussed in court. However, when Munsinger finally ordered Sigg's sentence, she just stared forward toward her son. But during the entire sentencing, Jessica's mother only left the courtroom when the Chief Deputy District Attorney, Hal Sargent, began describing Jessica's last hours alive. As Sargent described how Sigg waited in the back of his Jeep while watching Jessica, the courtroom echoed with sobs and sniffles. All the details were shared in the courtroom, and it was not a pretty view. It is said that Austin waited until Jessica walked next to his car before he grabbed her. And after grabbing her, he bound her arms and legs and later threw her in the back seat. When describing all the events, Sargent said, "It's painful to imagine what he did to her at that time. We know he sexually assaulted her." He went on to describe how, for the next 2 hours, Sigg kept Jessica in his bedroom. And he made her watch a movie while he cut her hair. He then laid out clothes for her to change into, which was somehow involuntary for Jessica. At this point, Jessica had no choice because she was somehow being forced to do all of this. After a while, Austin tried to strangle Jessica with zip ties, but the plastic only cut into his hands. Later on, Sigg told the police that he didn't have enough leverage. This was according to Sargent. Eventually, Sigg ended up strangling Jessica with his bare hands for up to 3 minutes. And the moment he saw Jessica twitching, Sigg went ahead and filled a bathtub with scalding hot water and forced her face down into it. During the whole hearing, Sargent refused to give details on how Sigg methodically dismembered Jessica, not wanting to make the entire courtroom uneasy. The details were just that gruesome. When Sigg was asked why he did what he did, he claimed that he was fulfilling a sexual fantasy. During one of the last hearings, Sargent struggled to describe the crime. He said, "Perhaps Austin Sigg's words are best." Sigg went ahead to tell the investigators, "There's no better word to describe what I have done than evil." But in all this, when did Jessica disappear? It was on the early autumn morning of October 5th, 2012, when Jessica did not make it to roll call. When her 5th grade teacher realized that she was not there, she called the child's mother, Sarah Ridgeway. The teacher wanted to let Jessica's mother know that Jessica had not yet arrived at school. However, when the teacher called, Jessica's mother did not pick up. At the moment, she was sleeping after a late-night shift. And when she got the message that her daughter did not make it to school, it had already been 8 hours. And in 2 days, a massive search had already begun. More than 1,000 people and 75 local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies were searching for her. 2 days after the search began, police came across Jessica's backpack about 6 miles away from her home. And on October 10th, the police found young Jessica's dead body and began their homicide investigation. At this point, the first suspects were Jessica's parents, but after a while, they were cleared. Afterward, the search continued, and the community's outrage over Jessica's murder eventually became high. During this entire turmoil and search, Mindy Sigg had to face a tough decision. Mindy learned that her son, Austin, had some involvement in Jessica's disappearance. Generally, the Siggs did not live that far from the Ridgeway family, and at some point, Austin had once attended Jessica's elementary school. Mindy Sigg eventually told the Associated Press, "I made the phone call and he turned himself in. That's all I have to say." Mindy was the one who called the police on her son after he confessed to her that he was the one who had kidnapped and killed Jessica. Austin told his mother that he was a monster and needed punishment. And so, Austin Reed Sigg was arrested on October 23rd. He allegedly consented to be interrogated by investigators for the next 6 hours after being arrested. And during that time, according to law enforcement officials, Austin confessed to the abduction and killing of 10-year-old Jessica Ridgeway. The prosecutors also stated that they had DNA evidence positively linking Sigg to the crime. To be more specific, there were DNA remnants in the crawlspace of the Sigg home. After the hearing, Jessica's family refused to speak with the reporters. However, Sargent went on to talk to the reporters. He said that the family hopes that the community doesn't remember Jessica for how she died, but for how she lived. He said he stole from Jessica her future, not only everything she was, but everything she would be. Before the hearing came to an end, Jessica's family shared memories and photos of the joyous, caring girl. And as Austin watched these images of Jessica, who seemed to be smiling behind her purple glasses, he wept in front of everyone. And the following day, the defense attorney, for the first time, presented a glimpse into Sigg's childhood with a slideshow that included some photos of Sigg as a happy and smiling child. For months, defense attorneys presented experts and arguments suggesting that Sigg was not yet mature enough to completely understand his actions. On the other hand, prosecutors maintained that Sigg meticulously planned before he went hunting for the woman at Kettner Lake. And 4 months later, he went after Jessica, completing what he had started at the lake. In the end, Sargent said, "It's a chilling thought to think of what a fully matured Austin Sigg is capable of." Do you think that Austin deserved such a sentence? And better yet, was that justice enough for Jessica? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.